So, what's the deal with AI? Is it the next great revolution in human history, or are we all just caught up in some kind of massive collective delusion? Right now, that's one of the most polarizing questions you could ask, and honestly, the answer you get really depends on who you're talking to.
And that question, man, it just gets right to the heart of it. This came from a Reddit community for AI enthusiasts, and it just perfectly captures that feeling from inside the AI bubble. There's this genuine sense that they're watching history being made, but at the same time, they're just completely baffled as to why everybody else doesn't see it too.
I mean, for the believers, for the people who are all in, comparing this moment to a failed tech fad like 3D TVs, it just completely misses the point. To them, the evidence is just so overwhelming, so obvious, that the skepticism doesn't make any sense. It's like they feel they're living in the future, and everyone else is just stuck. And just look at the scale of the comparisons people are making here. They're not just talking about another cool product. They're putting their first time using AI up there with getting high-speed internet after dial-up, or using an iPhone for the very first time. But then, it just escalates. We're talking about the discovery of the fundamental laws of physics, even the invention of agriculture itself. I mean, for them, this isn't just a new tool. It's a technology that is going to completely redefine civilization.
Okay, but on the flip side, for every one of those grand predictions, you've got a skeptical counterpoint. A user on the subreddit r/badeconomics puts it perfectly. You know what the problem is with being an economist? Everyone has an opinion about the economy. From their perspective, all this fear about AI causing mass unemployment, it sounds pretty familiar. Because, we've basically heard this story with almost every major technological shift in history.
So, a key concept that economists always bring up in these debates is something called the lump of labor fallacy. It's basically this idea that there's a fixed pie of jobs out there. So if a machine takes one slice, a human automatically loses out, forever. But economists argue that this is just wrong. Historically, technology doesn't just destroy jobs, it creates totally new demands and new industries. It actually makes the whole pie bigger.
And this is the perfect example of that clash in action. A user on that same subreddit, r/badeconomics, decided to critique a really popular video from Kurzgesagt. The video argued that this time, with AI, things really are different. And the user's spoiler was, it's not. So this gives us a perfect case study to really dig into.
So that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Is this time really different? Let's break down the core arguments from both sides, using the claims that were made in that video and the pretty detailed economic teardown that followed. All right, so here's a central piece of evidence from the Kurzgesagt video. It compares General Motors in its prime back in '79 to Google in 2012. And you look at the numbers, they both made billions of dollars, but Google did it with a tiny, tiny fraction of the workforce. The conclusion seems pretty obvious, right? Modern tech companies just don't create jobs on the same scale as the old industrial giants.
But not so fast. The economic critique immediately throws up a huge red flag. They argue the numbers themselves are, well, funky. The analyst found out that Google's revenue was just for a single quarter, not the whole year. And the GM number? It didn't account for inflation and seemed impossible to actually source. So this isn't just a little mistake. It kind of calls the whole comparison into question.
And it's not just about the questionable data. The critique argues the whole comparison is just fundamentally flawed. It's like comparing apples and oranges. You've got a mature, vertically integrated manufacturer like GM versus a high-growth tech company that outsources tons of its work. The counterargument is that higher revenue per worker isn't a problem. That's called productivity. It's actually a sign of economic progress. And hey, the tech sector as a whole, it's created millions of jobs, like the 1.6 million programmers and developers we have today.
Okay, so the video makes another pretty big claim, that new job creation has been shrinking since the '70s. But the economic counterargument provides some really crucial context. A huge reason for the job boom in the mid-20th century was that women were moving from unpaid domestic work, which, by the way, wasn't counted in official stats, into the formal, paid workforce. So it wasn't that more types of jobs were being created, but that more people were entering the economy that we actually measure.
So if those classic economic arguments still seem to hold water, then what do we do with all this insane hype and investment? Well, that leads us to this really interesting third way of looking at it, which is summed up perfectly by this user. What if it's both? What if it's a bubble and a revolution at the same time?
Well, from an investor's point of view, there's a strong argument that, yeah, financially this is different. Think about the dot-com bubble. That was fueled by a ton of speculation and mountains of debt. But today's AI boom, it's being bankrolled by the wealthiest corporations in history, tech giants with billions and billions in cash. That suggests the financial foundation is way more stable than it was back in the late 90s.
And this really gets to the heart of that more nuanced take. A short-term financial bubble, where company evaluations get crazy and maybe even crash, that doesn't actually change the long-term fundamental impact of the technology. Remember, the dot-com bubble burst, but the internet didn't just go away. It became, well, everything. A lot of people believe the exact same thing is going to be true for AI.
Okay, so after all that big picture debate, let's get real for a second. What's it actually like to use these tools day to day? For a lot of professionals, the experience is, well, it's both incredible and incredibly frustrating. The hype promises you this PhD-level intelligence, but the reality is often buggy code, flawed logic, and just a baffling lack of common sense. It's not quite the genius in a box we were promised, yet.
And this brings us to what might be the most important piece of the whole puzzle. Let's just forget the economic models and the investment charts for a minute. What's the raw human emotional reaction when you encounter this technology for the first time? How does it feel?
I mean, that's a visceral reaction, right? That's not excitement or just curiosity. It's a deep, unsettling feeling. It's the feeling you get when a fundamental rule of the world has just been broken right in front of you. That feeling that the ground beneath your feet isn't stable anymore. That points to a technology that hits us on a really primal level.
And here we go again. You see that same moment of pure shock? That hair standing on end feeling when you realize you're just talking to a machine in plain English and it's doing something complex, something that was supposed to be pure science fiction. That's the moment when the abstract debate about a revolution becomes intensely personal and very, very real.
And this one, wow. This might be the most profound impact of all. This goes way beyond jobs or economics, and it hits something existential. If a machine can create art, if it can reason, what does that mean for our own purpose? What's the point of being human in a world where our minds are no longer unique? For some people, this isn't just an interesting philosophical question. It triggered a genuine, year-long crisis of meaning.
So all of this brings us right back to where we started. We've heard from the believers who see a revolution on the scale of agriculture. We've heard from the skeptical economists who see the same old pattern of technological panic, and we felt that deep, personal, sometimes really unsettling human response to it all. So after hearing all that, who do you think is delusional? The people who see the world about to change forever, or the people who think it's just business as usual?